Morning, guys. How is everyone? Apologies for the lack of content. If I'm being brutally honest, didn't really have much in me, and I've not really been in the mood for it. Um, just thought we'd do a quick update where we are and kind of give a feel for how I'm thinking about the world. Post the budget, we are, I think, stuck in a very much a political interregnum. The budget has bought Starmer and Reeves and probably a lot of other people in government a little while. It's brought them stability from the PLP, who were clearly getting their knives out, but I don't think it's effectively stopped the plotting. I don't think it's an if Starmer goes, it's going to be a when. Can he make it to the May elections? I think it's actually very unlikely, but we'll see. I thought he might be gone before Christmas, so you never know. The bar to get rid of a Labour leader is quite high. So, I think on top of that, the usual suspects, including the King of the North himself, Andy Burnham, have their own issues with the challenge at the moment. Burnham's being is the fact that he probably can't find a safe seat to get into Parliament, such as the level of anger towards the Labour Party. Really, I think that all we're doing is waiting for the next crisis because, let's face it, this government just staggers from one crisis to another. And let's not underestimate what's going on within the markets. The government was lucky that the budget came out just as the Fed started cutting rates in the United States, and that has becalmed the markets worldwide as and started liquidity injections. However, at some stage, people are going to seriously look at the amount of gilts that the government wants to issue over the next 12, 24 months, and then realise that the government's spending money like a drunken sailor, and all of their fiscal consolidation is actually due to happen at the end of the Parliament. All of those lovely tax rises and everything else, just as the next election's coming. And I suspect at some point, someone's just going to turn around and go, this is Bobbins, you clearly aren't going to do that. I have to say, if you look at the news now, there is clearly a conspiracy to get Farage, I suppose, or a project to get him. It is a testament to the level of desperation that Labour has at the moment, that they are deploying every dirty trick they can to try and attack and harm him and reform. Everything from the stuff over his historical racism at school. Apparently, he said some mean words to some kids 50 years ago, and that's allegedly going to stop the country voting for him. All the way through to the latest one over this investigation into Russia, which you can almost guarantee is not going to be independent, and will look at everything apart from the Labour's weird obsession with the CCP in China. But it is a testament, as I said, to just how desperate Labour is that they're deploying this now. This would be the stuff that you would normally expect to be deployed much nearer to a general election to really try and harm reform pre an election. And I think what you're seeing really is actually, again, Starmer and Reeves, or Starmer, who's basically making the decision, deploying it now, again, in what I consider to be a vain effort to sustain his premiership, because looking at the polling coming out of particularly Wales and Scotland, May could well be an absolute existential crisis for Labour across those two zones. I mean, if we're looking at Welsh polling at the moment for the Welsh Parliament, you're looking at Plaid Cymru is polling at about 33%, Reform on 30%, Labour and the Conservatives on 10%, and then the rest on trailing behind that. To give you some idea, at the last election, Labour got 40%, 40% of the vote and 27 seats. You're literally, it's a near death experience for the Labour Party in Wales, and you know what? It cannot come soon enough, in my opinion, because Labour has been nothing but toxic for Wales since pretty much the year zero. Will Plaid Cymru be any better? No. But in actual fact, I think that's probably a positive thing because Plaid Cymru will double down on all of the useless policies that Labour had, and that effectively will likely open up the way for an actual move to the right within Wales in the future, because people are going to realise that there is no change if you're going to keep electing people who keep just trying to shove left-wing and progressive politics down your throats, even as the economy rots into the ground. In terms of Scotland, the polling is not looking well. It's looking better, but it's still not looking great for Labour. Let me just get this up. At the 2024 general election, Labour would polled 35% of the vote. Still very poor showing. SNP on 30, Conservatives 12.7, and Reform Lib Dems 9.7, and Reform at 6.9%. In the latest polling today, the SNP is basically stable on 30% of the vote. Labour has collapsed from that 33% down to 18%. The Conservatives have dropped a point or so to 11%, but it's Reform that's doing the running, and it's climbing up to 23% to potentially to become the second largest party in the Scottish Parliament. And again, from the perspective of Scotland, that's actually probably wholly a good outcome. At some stage, political gravity will hit the SNP just as it's hit Labour in Wales. At some stage, people realise that the shysters in charge are not going to offer up any real change, and they basically will pivot towards a more right-wing, nationalist, patriotic position. I don't care if that's Reform or Conservatives, as long as they break the stranglehold and hopefully begin the process of turning these nations, parts of my country, around and making them successful again. The polling for the rest of England for Labour is equally bad. It is basically a near-death experience, likely next May. And as I said, the reason why all of these dirty tricks against Farage and Reform are being deployed now is because Starmer is trying to save his own skin, because of the fact that he knows that if these results are even vaguely as bad as this, then he's a goner. And I suspect anyway that he'll probably be goner before then, but who knows. In terms of my own politics and everything else, like I said, it is a political interregnum. We are kind of just sitting, waiting to see what happens next. It is enraging. I see my country, we see our country slowly going the wrong direction, and that speed increasing. I see Labour making horrible after horrible decision, which I think is wholly negative for the country, from everything including the workers' rights bill that's just passed. Some of it I agree with, most of it I do not, all the way through to the complete lack of action to actually deal with the mass importation of people via the boats and legal migration, all the way through to the complete failure to get a grip of the NHS. I notice Wes is no longer claiming that just being nice to doctors will get Labour what they want, all the way through to and including, frankly, this risible effort to to roll the pitch for mass conscription and preparation for war with Russia. I mean, Russia is apparently struggling to beat Ukraine, but apparently it's going to fight its way through most of Western Europe to invade us. And yes, before people say I accept that boats and submarines can get out into the Atlantic and everything else, but the idea that Russia's going to suddenly fire a couple of missiles at London for shits and giggles, with the UK being a nuclear state, is, I have to say, slightly risible. And as I said, economically, sadly, and I mean sadly, it looks like the budget and the build-up to the budget has done exactly what most of us were predicting at the time was doing. It has basically frozen the economy hard. So we just are rolling in towards Christmas now. probably, unless something drastically happens, I won't post anything. Maybe I'll post something. I'm going to the south of Spain at just after Christmas. I'll maybe post a nice video somewhere on the beach, giving you an update, but probably not. We're just basically waiting for the next crisis, if I'm being honest, both political and economic, to land, to force the system to start reacting against it. I still think that there is a sizable chance that we see another diversity event, i.e., an Islamic attack within the country. Even without that, I think that we are now finally, people are waking up to the absolute tsunami of crime that legal and illegal migrants are propagating within the country. Much of it extremely unpleasant. We're talking about rape, assault, sexual assault, etc., on women and children. And I can't help thinking that at some stage, again, there will be another nasty reaction against that. I think that you now are in a situation where every effort to censor things is actually increasing public anger over it. And the fact that much of this is now flowing out and people are starting to talk about it very openly indicates to me that we are probably at a moment of change. You've definitely seen it. If this year has been the year of migration politically, and what I mean by that, it is the year where the Overton window on migration has been firmly torn off the wall, burnt, and then run over with an articulated truck multiple times. People are willing to talk about migration. People are not going to be silenced over it, and people are more and more willing to just call out the now, I would argue, quite commonly accepted problems that we're experiencing. Where I think that what has not happened is the political system has, due to the rise of reform, the political system is talking about it. The Shamrood reforms are a reflection that Labour feels that it has to at least demonstrate that it's listening over these things, but no party has got anywhere near a policy selection that I think reflects where public mood is going. And I think that is something that's going to start coming in 2027 as public rage continues to build, not just in Britain, but across most of the West. Do not ever think that we are alone in the problems that we have. Pretty much every problem that we've got in the country, from a deteriorating healthcare system, a shagged out military that's been run into the ground, a deteriorating domestic security environment, a broken political system, a knackered economic system, a completely spazzed out energy system, and much, much more is being or has been replicated by the liberal elites across certainly most of Europe, if not most of the West. Different countries are in different positions in terms of how far along that process they are, but pretty much every one of them is struggling with them. And so, though we have seen movement in terms of the discussion and everything else, like I said, within our politics, I've yet to see a policy suite in response to migration. I don't think that we're existing in a void or a vacuum. And I suspect as other countries start responding more and more firmly over these things, that will wash back over into our own country and vice versa. So we'll see. It is, it's a fascinating time in politics. It is an enraging time in politics. It is a very depressing time to be in this country. There is a sullenness, well, not just in this country. All those things are applicable to most other countries as well. But there is a sullenness to society, a sullenness that comes from having so many problems and not having a sense that there's anyone in charge who's willing to get on with these things. but there's also a sullenness that comes from a sense that you're having things imposed upon you that you don't want. You've been very clear you don't want, and yet it is still being done to you. And sullenness, an emotion, as we all know, it can kind of lead to depression or it can lead to rage. And I think that's very, very much where we are at the moment. I don't think that the British public is settling into depression, put it that way. I think that we are building for something else. It's been very clear for some time. That's about it. Now, if I don't speak to you before or I don't post anything before, try and not listen to people like me over the Christmas period. Have a lovely time with your friends and family, or whatever you're doing. Hug them tight. It's been a tough year. It's been a tough decade. Let's not lie about that. But let's have a bit of hope. I do think things are moving. I don't think it'll get better soon, but I can cope with it not getting better soon as long as it's moving. And I think this is the one thing that my American friends have that we don't have, and that is at least a sense of a administration, whether you like Trump or not. And you know, I'm very torn in myself, but it is an administration that has come in with a clear idea of what it was trying to achieve, and it is getting on with that, very imperfectly, but it is getting on with that. And I think that's the thing that we lack at the moment is across most of Europe is just we're still stuck. We do not have anyone in charge in 99% of the countries that have any real drive or sense of direction, and that just leaves people feeling more and more, as I said, sullen and resentful. But sullen and resentful hopefully will give birth to anger, and from anger we may break a few things, but change will come. So anyway, Merry Christmas. If I don't speak to you before, have a happy new year, and let's hope 2026, brings us change. See you soon.